other states. So it's great to have you all with us here this afternoon. So we are now some 176 days away from the 2022 midterm elections. And we are only 65 days away from the Maryland primary elections. And my guess is that you're here with us because you know, as we do, that the threats to our democracy did not end when President Biden and Vice President Harris were inaugurated just 16 months ago. In fact, over the past year and a half, the disgraced former president and the domestic terrorists of his radicalized Republican Party have only become more brazen in their assault on the rule of law, on voting rights, and on our fundamental freedoms, like the right to make private healthcare decisions for ourselves. So our democracy is on the line, and we simply must do all that we can between now and November, because we cannot allow these extremists and neo-fascists to ever get anywhere near the levers of power again. The majority of Americans share our belief in our founding ideals and in the democratic norms that we've long taken for granted. So if we organize ourselves to mobilize that majority, we can and we will win in November. So we've got a great program for you today, and we're going to talk about how you can help us to do just that. But first, a couple of housekeeping items. There we go. Let me just sort of advance my slides here. There we go. Just a couple of housekeeping items to share with you. The attendees, you all can see that you're muted and your camera is off. If you have questions during the program, please drop those into the chat. And we, of course, know that you will all be respectful in doing that. And this meeting is being recorded. And after the meeting later on, we will be posting it on the Indivisible Howard County website. Also, after the meeting, we will be sharing this slide deck as well as the information links that we will be posting into the chat from time to time, as well as other information resources. So please don't feel stressed about having to take notes if you see a long internet address. We will be getting that around to you. I want to give you a quick overview of the agenda we have today. We're just going to give a brief introduction to Indivisible Howard County for those of you who may be new to us. Then we're going to share some of the highlights of the activities of our action teams over the last 6 months or so. And then we are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Rachel Bitecofer, who will be providing an outlook on the 2022 midterms, how that looks for us. And then after that, we will have members of our Red to Blue team and our Education Action team providing an outlook on the midterms from the perspective of those of us here in Howard County. Then we're going to talk about Democracy Summer 2022, how it is that we're going to help to make this blue wave happen for November. And then toward the end, we will close with a special message for Indivisible Howard County from Representative Jamie Raskin. So that's the basic structure of our meeting today. Now, before we get going, let's see here, there we go. You may recall that we had announced that we're going to give away 3 signed copies of Representative Raskin's new book, Unthinkable. And that book was written by him over the past year. He began writing it shortly after the tragic death of his son, Tommy, which occurred just days before the January 6th insurrection. And despite those heartbreaking circumstances, his book is really a compelling and ultimately hopeful story. And Maryland and the nation are really fortunate to have him in the Congress, where he currently serves on the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th coup attempt. So I want to thank Ted Stewart from our team for working with Representative Raskin's team to help make this happen. And I know that he and Sue Frankel have been drawing the names of our winners at random from our list of attendees here. And I am looking to see here if we've got our first winner, and we do. We have our first winner of the book, and that is Bob Lisk. Bob, congratulations. Thank you for being with us here today. And we're delighted that you'll be the first winner of the book. We've got 2 more to give away a little bit later on. So thank you for that. And let's move on here. And we will be arranging also to get the book into your hands just as soon as possible. Oops, here we go. So first of all, just a brief introduction for those of you who may be new to Indivisible Howard County. I'm just going to give a quick overview of who we are and how we work. So we are an informal group of citizens here in Howard County, Maryland. We are registered with the Indivisible Project's national network of local grassroots groups, and our 750 plus members believe in fairness, tolerance, inclusion, and democracy. We came together in early 2017 to help fight the racism, xenophobia, authoritarianism, and corruption that was pushed by the disgraced former president and his allies. We are an all-volunteer organization. We're not about fundraising. We're not a 501c3. We'll sometimes pass the hat when we need to pay for room rentals or things like that to help make our events happen. But basically, we're about action. We're about trying to make things happen and mobilizing voters to help make those things happen. So that's who we are. Now, about how we work. We engage and empower ordinary people to help drive extraordinary change at all levels. You know, as Alice Walker said, the most common way that people give up their power is by thinking that they don't have any. And we are here to reclaim that power. And we believe that if we take our rights and responsibilities as citizens seriously and fully engage in democracy, we will make a difference. And we have made a difference. So this is about much more than just voting, right? This is about voting in every election, whether it's local, state, or national. And it's about mobilizing others and helping them to get out to vote. And it's about keeping ourselves informed and showing up to help hold our elected officials accountable, because sunshine is the best disinfectant. So while any constituent can contact their representatives and advocate for issues that are important to them, there really are advantages to working as part of a group of like-minded people, because no one person really can keep up with all of the issues that they might care about. And really a single voice is not likely going to move the position of an elected official. But when we work together, we can really make a big difference. And we are not top down. We are driven by our bottom up structure with our action teams driving the action and channeling that energy that comes from our membership. So as you can see, we've organized ourselves with various action teams to keep on top of the issues that are of greatest concern to people who are in that team. And you really don't need to have any specific expertise to be a part of any one team. What you really need is a passion for the mission of that action team and a passion for making a difference. And our teams work to research the issues, and then they bring to the rest of us those things that we think, or that they think we can do to make a difference, both here in Howard County and beyond. Those may be things like phone calls, making phone calls to our elected officials about pending legislation, generating emails and letters, and showing up for public hearings, and organizing rallies or participating in lobbying events, and getting involved in political campaigns to really help those that we believe in. And by working together and organizing and coordinating our efforts, we can magnify our voices and have a much greater impact. So to do this, we pull on three basic levers to make change happen, right? So one of them is our constituent power. We vector our energies as constituents to try to have a greater impact. And we work to mobilize voters to get them out to vote, to make sure that they're aware of what's happening and to deliver them for voting. And then we work to try to help move and to shape public opinion, all with a view to advancing progressive political change at local, state, and national levels. So now that I've shared a little bit about who we are and how we work, I'd like to share just a few highlights of the work that's been done over the last few months by our action teams. And this is the work that's been done since our last members meeting last fall. I'll begin with our climate action team. That team delivered testimony at the Maryland General Assembly, which concluded about a month ago, on more than 75 bills And they worked with a number of other organizations to help push through the approval of some 34 bills that cover various aspects of the climate crisis and environmental issues. And I think one of the things I'd really like to highlight is working with the Maryland Climate Coalition to help pass the Climate Solutions Now Act. That was an important piece of legislation that the Assembly pushed through. The governor allowed it to become law. And that really puts Maryland at the forefront of taking climate action here in the United States. The reduction targets that it sets for Maryland for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the coming years are among the most ambitious now in the United States. The target is now to reduce our emissions by 60% by the year 2031, with a view to becoming net zero in emissions by 2045. That's really ambitious, but it's also the kind of thing that can be helpful for our climate and for the health of our people and for the strength and resilience economy. There are other aspects of that bill also that will allocate resources for low to moderate income communities that are impacted by, they're among the first and worst impacted by climate change. It will also help school districts in converting their bus fleets to electric buses. And it will also help to provide a path for transitioning Maryland's state-owned fleet of vehicles to low emission or zero emission vehicles in the coming years. And there are some incentives also for developing community solar projects, particularly those serving low and moderate income communities. So a number of things to like in that bill, and our team worked very hard to help make that happen. So between that and all of the testimony that they delivered, they really did make a difference in the General Assembly this year. So hats off to our climate action team. And if this is an issue that's near and dear to your heart, like it is mine, we invite you to join the team. If you're interested in the climate issue and I want to join the climate action team, we invite you to just drop a note in the chat. And by all means, we'll be happy to follow up with you. Then we have our Defend Democracy team. And that team has been a part of the For the People Maryland Coalition. And it worked with others to continue the fight for the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And so they engaged in rallies and phone banking and letter writing and all kinds of efforts to try to help push that legislation through. Now, while the bills passed the House, we know that they stalled in the Senate. Thank you to Senators Manchin and Sinema. However, you know, the one thing we can say is our team is not giving up. In fact, they've got a meeting scheduled with our own Senator Ben Cardin in the next few days to try to help push him to nudge the administration on taking executive action on many of the issues that were covered under the Freedom to Vote Act. We're continuing our efforts on every front, looking for every kind of workaround we can to try to make sure that voting rights are in fact going to be protected, because we have seen how many states around the US are working, Republicans are working hard to try to take the vote away from people. The team also collaborated with Common Cause, the ACLU, and the League of Women Voters on a number of other pieces of legislation to strengthen the voting process. Won't go into great detail, but a number of things, for example, that improve the pre-processing of mail-in ballots and improving the way vote recounts are done and funded, and strengthening the ability of state prosecutors to prosecute election and campaign finance violations. So that team has been doing some great work. And again, if defending democracy is at the top of your list, whether it's at the state or local or federal level, this is a team that's engaged on all those fronts. And again, if you're interested, please do drop a note in the chat and we will be happy to follow up with you. Then we have our education action team. They've collaborated, for example, in recent months with other groups here in Howard County to organize the We Are the People rally in support of the LGBTQIA+ students and faculty in our school system who have been on the receiving end of a lot of discrimination in the past year or so. And so that rally was held at Lake Tittamuckundi. Our own Lori Chin spoke at that rally, and it was a way for the community to show broad support for that part of our community. And they've continued to advocate for truth in the team of history and advocating for access to books and media with a diversity of backgrounds and life experience represented in them, and supporting equitable service for all students. They've also advocated during the General Assembly to successfully pass legislation, for example, a bill to make it harder for county boards of education and public preschools to discriminate against people because of their race, ethnicity, color, religion, and so on. They also pushed through successfully a bill to fund pay for para-educators, and some important improvements to update the blueprint that had been adopted a couple of years ago for modernizing education here in the state of Maryland. We're going to hear a little bit more from Lori Chin of our education team later on in the program. But if education is your issue and you're interested in this, by all means, please do drop a note in the chat. And then we have our immigration action team. And in recent months, they lobbied successfully for the passage of the Healthy Babies Equity Act during the 2022 Maryland General Assembly. And they played a major role in getting the Howard County Human Rights Commission to make immigration status a protected class here in Howard County. One of the things that we also face in the coming months is the fact that there has been an effort on the part of right-wing radicals here in Howard County to try to repeal the Liberty Act that our county council approved in 2020 by a vote of 4-1 to protect the immigrant community here in Howard County. Using dishonest and surreptitious methods to gather signatures, they managed to get a ballot initiative on the Howard County ballot this year to repeal that act. And so our immigration team and others will be working in the coming months to defend the Liberty Act. So if you're interested in helping them to do that, I know they could really use your help. And so if you're interested in immigration issues and helping to defend the Liberty Act, please drop a note in the chat, and we'll be happy to follow up with you and make sure you can get plugged in with that team. One of the other things in the last few months that we've done is we successfully launched a new action team on media integrity. This team was formed partly because we have seen how the weakness and corruption of the media has really fueled the disinformation campaigns that have so distorted our democratic process and done enormous damage to the health of our people and the planet and our democracy. So I'm really excited to see this team getting started. They've gotten together, they've begun to define their objectives. They began to organize some activities, for example, mounting an effort to try to push for the confirmation of the Biden nominee for the Federal Communications Commission, Gigi Son. And that's an important commission because they help to make sure that we maintain things like net neutrality, and hopefully also to try to make our media system a bit more fair and effective in getting truthful information out there. And they've also worked to help educate our members on ways that we can stop paying for disinformation networks like Fox News through our cable subscriptions. So they're doing some great work. And if you're interested in media issues, by all means, please do drop a note in the chat, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to welcome you aboard. Let's see here. Sorry. There we go. Red to blue. So our red to blue team focuses on flipping red states and districts into blue ones. And they do that through a number of ways, and particularly looking at our neighbors to the north in Pennsylvania. They've been involved in text banking, phone banking, and canvassing, going door to door, knocking on doors, voting, getting with voters, and actually having conversations with them. And a big target for this team is to elect a Democratic US senator to replace the outgoing Republican senator, and to get Democrats in as representatives, as a governor, and in the state legislature, particularly from districts in the South and South Central part of Pennsylvania. This team's postcard brigade has also been busy. They've generated over 7,000 postcards to voters in various races in other states like Virginia, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona. We've seen the interest in this team really skyrocket. This team has practically tripled its size, going from 10 to 28 people in recent months. But there is so much to do. I know that they would be delighted to welcome newcomers who are interested in working to flip red districts to blue ones. We're going to hear a bit more from Tara Carey of the Red to Blue team a little bit later in the program. But if you are interested in the work that they do, again, please do go ahead and drop a note in the chat. And then I also want to highlight our communications team. You know, they are the glue that holds our members together. We cannot succeed without effective communications, both internally amongst ourselves as well as externally to the public and to other organizations that we collaborate with. So if you're one of the 750 plus members already of Indivisible Howard County, you should already be seeing our bi-weekly updates that come out about 10 a.m. every other Sunday. And you'll see occasional action alerts that we produce. If you're not seeing those emails, please do let us know, because we do want to make sure that there isn't a problem with the email address that we have for you. So send us a note, drop a note in the chat. We'll be happy to follow up with you, but we do want to make sure that you're getting the communications. And we encourage you to open those emails, because there's useful information in there, action items where you can help, and with just a few minutes of time, sending off an email, making a quick call to your legislator, those kinds of things. It really makes a difference when they hear from a large number of people. And that's what we're hoping to do with these kinds of action alerts. This team also has spruced up our Indivisible Howard County website in recent months, keeping the content fresh and relevant for our members. So if you've got particular areas of interest, hopefully you'll find stuff there that is useful for you. And they've worked really hard to also implement a new messaging program over the last several months. We now use Every Action instead of MailChimp, and that is really helpful for us because it enables us to basically zero in more precisely on our members based on congressional or councilmanic districts. So if there's a particular issue affecting a specific district or a part of our community, we can communicate more effectively in a more targeted way with our membership. So great work by that team. And if you are somebody who likes to write, if you're into graphic arts, or if you just simply prefer to work behind the scenes in keeping us all connected, this is the team for you. And so please do feel free to drop a note in the chat, and our communications team would be, I'm sure, delighted to welcome you. Now, the other thing I would just say is, you know, when we're organizing and involved in activism, we do have, sometimes we run into setbacks and disappointments, and it's easy to lose heart sometimes. And I always like to remind myself and share with friends the notion that really don't agonize, organize. And I'm really grateful to our action team facilitators, because they are the ones who organize, and they're the ones who make things happen. They are the ones who make our decentralized bottom-up process work. And another part of this effort is that I've found as an unexpected and really huge side benefit of this organizing work, really it's the new friends that we make along the way, new friendships with folks here in town, and really it's a great way to sort of have a greater sense of community and to know what's going on. So that's a great benefit of organizing. And we are an all volunteer force, and folks work hard, but we also look for ways to have fun together and to get to know each other better. So I'm really grateful to this team for their creativity, their collegiality, their passion, and their dedication for building a fairer and more compassionate democracy. And so with that, I'm really, really happy and delighted that we have with us this evening Dr. Rachel Bitecofer. She's a nationally recognized election forecaster, analyst, pollster and political strategist who is regularly featured in media outlets such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC. In fact, if you were watching MSNBC this morning, you may have seen Dr. Bitecofer on Jonathan Capehart's program late this morning. She founded or co-founded last fall an organization called Strike PAC, aimed at better enabling Democrats to campaign more effectively in a polarized, hyper-partisan environment where who votes determines who wins. Right? And so she's focused on promoting more effective messaging and branding strategies, and those are really so crucial to winning. And we keep hearing folks complain that Democrats are really bad at messaging. So she can really help us and hopefully our candidates and our organizations do a much better job of sharpening our message and punching back hard when we need to punch back hard on the disinformation that we have to contend with. So in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to her. And as she offers her thoughts on the 2022 midterms, I'd also want you to bear in mind that she accurately predicted the outcomes of the 2018 and 2020 election cycles. So again, we're really just so fortunate and thrilled to have Dr. Bitecofer here with us this evening. And Dr. Bitecofer, the floor is yours.
All right, I'm starting my video. Can people see me? I hope they can see me.
Yes, we can.
Very good. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm really excited to come and talk to your group. I don't know how many people know this, but I was actually born, well, not born in Maryland, but I spent my childhood in Maryland, my formative years, and graduated in Frederick County. So Maryland is a special place to me. A little frustrating watching you guys put Republican governors in office, but we can talk about that. We're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm here today to kind of lay out the frame for the midterms, and it's really important for you to understand that 2 weeks ago I would have had a slightly different version of what I'm going to say to you now prepared for you, and that's because obviously we see what's happened with the Roe memo leak, and that is it's really hard for people to understand why I say this is going to matter when so many other things that seem equally important to us matter too, and people haven't responded. But this really is a game. It's a game-changing moment. It's really a lifeline for Democrats. As you guys have heard many times, Democrats are predicted to lose seats in both chambers of Congress. They have narrow majorities in both, so that would mean that they're going to lose the majorities. And that's based off of this long-standing 50-year pattern that's only been disrupted twice of the incumbent party, the president's party, losing seats in the subsequent midterm. We'll talk about that, the disruption to that cycle, but people need to understand, the reason people liked me in 2018 when I came out on the scene was I was talking about the same thing, a midterm effect, but it favored us. And so I was very popular coming into groups like this and saying, oh, we're going to clean it up. We're going to pick up 40 seats. And now my message is, oh gosh, okay, the fundamentals now favor them. And we have to have a strategy that addresses directly those fundamentals, that is aimed towards disrupting them if we're going to have a chance. And that is just a long wind up to say that this Roe decision is going to be, a really disruptive event. We can tell it's disruptive already in terms of, I look for data. So, and it's kind of hard to have data for an event that happened a week ago, but we know that spontaneous rallies have broken out everywhere, that they're happening in cities that are large, towns, and also rural places that, had this not happened, we wouldn't be having Democrats or people from the left taking to the streets in any capacity. Nothing else could do that. Even this investigation, this Jan 6 hearing that we're going to have going through the summer, it's going to tell a shocking story. I mean, a story that if we heard of any other country in the world, we would be horrified and terribly concerned for the people who live there. But it wasn't going to bring people to the streets. So having this galvanizing effect of not just Roe getting whittled, which is what I had thought the court would tend to do, but eviscerating Roe, is really, it's just a game changer, because it allows Democrats for the first time to have the upper hand on politics on the abortion issue, on women's liberty, and enables them to frame this debate. Already we had a rights and democracy kind of frame going, right? But they've just declared open season on America's women, and because of federalism, we're going to see immediate. It's not like Obamacare where you pass it and there's going to take a long time to come into effect. Once Roe's decision comes out in the end of June, these trigger laws in about 23 states will take effect immediately. So we're really going to see it through the summer and the fall. Terrible news cycles for the Republican Party. And I don't know how Mitch feels in his heart about abortion, but if he's always been using it as a insincere wedge issue, then I imagine he is feeling really bad right now, because the second that memo came out, I think he and I, amongst everybody in the world, understood the most what it meant for them. I mean, they really were running into this midterm with a huge advantage. And we can talk a little bit about Maryland. Maryland being, the tendency is in Maryland, these Republicans are not winning just alone with Republican votes. They're getting some crossover vote. It's an atypical pattern that only occurs in Massachusetts and Maryland right now. And, so you guys are going to be competitive in that governor's race even before this Roe decision. It's a different circumstance. It's a definite, probably the best pickup opportunity in the whole country is your governor's race. But in any case, Roe is going to put us back into the ability to compete. And the reason is it's going to make news cycles that focus on the Republican Party. And if we want to survive a midterm effect, we really want to look at what drives the midterm effect. That is that the in party is what gets focused on in the media, gets blamed for every problem. Every news cycle that was dominated by Build Back Better or trying to pass infrastructure was a bad news cycle for Democrats, because it only serves to reinforce that. And what we are now looking at is at least a natural environment in which there's going to be two epic news events occurring that will allow us to be focusing on Republicans. And then my job is to talk to groups like yours. I mean, Indivisible to me is one of the best and most underutilized assets that the Democratic Party could be tapping into better, because it is the grassroots. I mean, you guys are the blood, soil, sweat, and tears. That's a motorcycle. Just give it a second of of the grassroots movement. And you guys are doing the most important work. Everyone always says, "Oh, Rachel, you do what is important." I'm like, no, it is important insofar as I have to redirect people how to do this new technique of stuff. But what I do is not important. What you do is important. Okay. Coming to this meeting, organizing the subgroups that you do, writing postcards, making phone calls, phone banking, and field is the most important resource that the party possesses. And so my goal, when I reach out to a group like yours, or I get invited, I come talk, is to convince you of that power, number one, and two, make sure that you're optimizing that resource in terms of what gets said to a person that you call on the phone, what that message is that you're conveying, because that interchange is worth $1 million, right? It's the most important thing. And we want to, if we can optimize that through the grassroots, even if the party can't get on board, we can start to have some effect as in terms of what I'm focused on doing, which is shielding the party's consultant class. And it's not candidates, it's not the heads of these agencies or these institutions. It's just an industry that has evolved in a decentralized way that has given a lot of strategic power to the consultants that run different components of campaigns. So you have a digital strategy and a polling strategy and a targeting strategy, and there's not a centralized strategy, and certainly not one that every candidate in races are hammering together, which is of course exactly what the Republican Party does in their messaging. It's all very centralized. It's the same message from the mayor's race all the way up through the state legislative stuff, and then into the House and the federal races, governor races. And it's really important for us to understand that if we're talking to people and we're talking about policy and we're trying to say, hey, we have this position, we want to do this policy, this is going to be good for you, or it's better aligns with you, that will work in Canada still, or France, or anywhere else in which the opposition is not hitting these people with Democrats are child groomers who are trying to, set up secret pedophilia rings. Okay, that's the message that swing voters get in Republican electioneering. It's not about appealing towards their interest or their, policy alignment. It's about disqualifying us. It is a race that the whole goal is to disqualify us in the minds of voters. That same messaging that disqualifies us in that conversion or swing pool also freaks out their base, and that's why they have solved their differential turnout. It is true that Democrats have worse turnout, drop off for midterms, but both parties have that when they are in power. The Republican Party solved their drop-off problem in 2018. It's why they were able to hold on to a couple of races that people thought they would lose in that cycle, like the Florida governor's race. But it's also why, we know for sure they're going to turn out really big in this midterm, that their turnout is probably going to be better than 18. And now it's about us designing a system that can help us match it. So I'm really excited to be here. I don't know if they had me taking any questions, so I don't want to overdo my intro.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bitecofer. That's great. Yes, we actually did hope that if you have a few minutes still to take some questions with us, that would be fantastic. We had invited folks to submit their questions in the chat, and I'm just double checking here to see if any have been sent to me yet. And one moment here. So yes, first question we have is, do you have any advice on how Dems can win the Maryland gubernatorial race? You've already touched on that, but that would be great to hear from you.
No, and I mean, I'm going to give you guys some advice that's different, right? So, I mean, because again, like, we know what the system's going to do and can kind of plan around that. So, like, the nominee is going to run a conventional campaign, or largely conventional, and what, like, a grassroots movement like your guys' could focus on is, like, in Maryland, there are Democrats that are voting for Republicans, and the reason is that our system, our messaging, our advertising, and our branding doesn't stick the radicalism on every Republican the way that we have a very small wing of ideologic, and I'm not making a value judgment, but in terms of the distribution of ideology of members of Congress, we have a small wing that scores out on the extremes of that distribution. Their entire party is the opposite. They only have a small wing that is still moderate, and 80% of the party is now radicalized. So it's really critical that to me, if I had my hand in this gubernatorial race, which is one of the easiest pickups, and guys, the price is potentially going into the Second American Civil War with a Republican governor, so we really don't want to mess this cycle up, right? Is to make sure that I am making it clear that this Republican nominee, be he actually moderate, or by today's definition, Republican moderate, which just means that he wants to put women in jail for abortions, right? Or whatever he may be, the job is to brand him as a modern Republican, and then make it clear to voters what that means for their health, their own wealth, and their own safety or security, not other people, because we care about other people. You and I care that immigrants that are here undocumented aren't left to die at the foot of a hospital, right? We care about those things, but guys, I got to tell you, we're very different. We're not typical. Even within the Democratic electorate, we're a little atypical. So we really want to be making sure that our messaging is what I call me-oriented and not we-oriented, because we know those people who are already we-oriented are the ones that are most likely to show up, especially in the conditions that we're living in. So our job is to make the rest of the electorate, the marginal part that was there for us in 2018 but disappeared in 2014, or wasn't there in 2014 and 2010, our job is to make sure they understand the stakes of the election, that democracy and the survival of the republic, their own stability is on the ballot, and that they associate every Republican with Donald Trump and the craziness of the modern Republican Party. And that's something that you have to bring them to, that watering hole. They don't just get there on their own. That's what the Republican system does so well.
Yeah, great, thank you. The other question, we've got a few questions here. The next one is, We are door knocking in southern Pennsylvania right now in red rural areas. Do you have any advice on talking to people in the rural areas?
Yeah, I mean, to me, what I'm trying to teach people to do, and I mean, this is kind of jumping the gun, but this is a project that I'm working on and trying to get out for like the general public, so for groups like Indivisible and all of its chapters to use, is look, you can't, if you're going to show up in rural America, you should tell them what the Republican Party has done to rural America, not what Democrats are going to do. They will smile at you and they will be very polite. And you may even leave feeling like I've won this person over. But at the end of the day, the way that politics works now is that party label and that brand, right? And if you have a D brand when they go into that ballot box, unless you've given them a reason to reject the R brand, they're not going to go with you. So to me, rural, wherever it is, it should be about bringing, you have to keep in mind, like you should see each door you knock as a rough clay. They don't know what you know. They don't know any of the news events that you know. They don't know any of these players that you know, may not even know who Kevin McCarthy is. Okay. Don't go with all this like high hanging complex fruit. Go down to the very bottom, right? Yeah, and you really want to articulate in that messaging a reason why they should end their brand loyalty to the Republican Party. To me, what does that best, and what this guide that I put out will do for people who are going to use it, is to teach them how to knock at the door, get the voter talking, and then start informing the voter. This is what the Republican Party has done to rural America, and it ain't pretty.
Great, thank you. The next question is, I love your tweets, but is that the best method for us to deliver our messaging? Are we preaching to the choir?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, because my Twitter account is specifically talking to the consultant class. Okay. So like you guys all get stuff from it, and I'm really grateful for that. But ultimately what I'm using my Twitter to do is to teach people, hey, how to use 4 words or 3 words to make a point and not sacrifice the rhetorical power of a slogan. So it can be technically accurate or not subject to, hey, I'll get a lot of those things on my slogan text, like, well, isn't it technically Rick Scott's plan or whatever, right? The technicality of our messaging is not our friend. They are not technical at all, right? Their message, but think about what their message is in terms of guns. They're coming to take the Democrats are coming to take your guns. No one's ever introduced that bill. Okay, never. It's never been introduced. So, and they don't say, oh, the Democrats want to pass a red flag law that makes it impossible for people who are domestic abusers to buy guns. They're not going to give us that. So we should be doing the same in our own messaging. But to answer your question, there is some work on the digital guerrilla. Like I'm in this guide that I'm putting out. It's actually built, I think, in this most easy user-friendly way just for social media, because it's going to teach people, okay, I'm going to crowdsource all my messaging stuff. I mean, you guys can steal it any time, so please do. Don't need to attribute, just take it, right? If it's on there, take it. But I'm going to crowdsource like actual, like what I call branding memes, because like in a glance, right? You need to convey the message in a glance. So you'll notice all of the stuff that I make is glance messaging, right? And I'm going to teach, but it's not just that I'm going to give you guys the right material. I'm going to explain the logic too behind each of the things so that you guys understand, so I can teach more people who can start doing this and kind of spread, right? Like Ivy or whatever. But I'm also going to talk about in the guide, listen, we have these algorithms and they're incredibly distortive. So like our Twitter threads, anybody on this call and you and me, they are getting an algorithm and a political like Twitter universe that does not exist in regular Twitter, right? So like if I'm my son, I never see stuff about news and politics, okay? Maybe if there's like a giant tornado that wipes out 100 people or something, but generally speaking, what I'm seeing is celeb gossip, sports stuff, things like that, video games. They're not doing any of that information. So I'm going to teach people, look, take this meme and don't just take it and put it on your thread, which is preaching to the choir, but go find a comment about like a thread, a celebrity thread about the Bachelorette that has, thousands of people are on this thing. and dump this thing that messages in a glance in it, so that somebody who's scrolling by, they don't get the choice. They get the message, right? They may reject it, but they're going to see it. And that's 9/10 of the law right here. That's the real fight that we're fighting. People are not panicked in America, not because they don't care that democracy is collapsing around them. It's because they do not know. And they will never know if we do not tell them until it's actually falling down in their feet.
Yeah, right. Well, a real quick follow-up question on that is, how do we get our hands on that guide?
It's in progress.
Okay.
I have a wonderful assistant who helps me make my memes, and is helping me with this guide. His name is Doug Haddix, if you guys want to follow him on Twitter. But he's a retiree, so he volunteers to help me. It's me and him. And then he also helps all these other charities. Right now he's in Honduras, and I have to wait till he comes back, but we are working on it. I'm also putting out a guide. It's going to teach people how to pivot and attack. So I said, when you show up at the door, instead of talking about what Democrats are going to do or defending Democrats to rural voters, which is worse, right? Like Stockholm syndrome, this idea that Democrats left rural voters behind. Oh my God, like, please don't say that, right? So in any case, I'm teaching people how to go have an offensively oriented conversation, right? Because there's a couple like rhetorical skills that you need to do that. But once you get going, because I've only trained a couple of people and it's taken off, right? Once you get going, it makes sense. You're like, oh yeah, like as I talk, I should be using my comments when they ask me about immigration, not to talk about immigration, not to talk about all the sadness of the system or whatever, to attack them, okay? Oh, immigration, you want to talk about border security? So do I, because where's your wall? I thought he was supposed to get you a big, beautiful wall that Mexico was going to pay for. No, he didn't get you that wall. You know what he did instead? Is he made a human pile of human detritus in the Mexican border, where women were raped daily, where children were abused, where people were starving and dying in dysentery. See how I did that? I'm like, I am now telling this person, A, the info that they don't have, and B, I am framing the other party as a non-choice. Do you see? And that's how they do it. They don't go too much to the doors and say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. I mean, sometimes they'll come up with some bullshit like build the wall, but generally they are all their messaging is about us.
Yeah. The next question, if you've just got a few more minutes to spend with us here, I know, but the next question is, how do we mitigate the negative Biden talk that comes from all sides?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. And today I did Capehart's show on MSNBC, and they had released a new poll. That poll says, only 13 or 15% of people, the respondents, said that the country's on the right track. And I want to use that to explain something. Democrats, when they're answering that poll, they're thinking about America and what all the shit show stuff we're facing, right? And when Republicans for Trump were answering that poll, all they were thinking about was tribalism, right? I must say I approve or I like what's happening because my dude's in charge. And you can see this in data. You can see Gallup data or anything that's collected between the end of one presidential term and the beginning of the other. You'll see an invert of if the economy is doing well, right? So if you ask Republicans in December or November of 2020, how's the economy? They're like, oh, it's great. You ask them in December after the election, it's suddenly bad. Trump's still in charge, okay? So nothing changed. So my point is, we have a system that it's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing that we're not polarized as badly. And it's not to say there's no polarization, guys. I mean, you don't come up with defund the police if you're don't have an ideologically rigid wing, okay? But our polarization is minimal in the system, and it is also hurting us that we're not tribal, right? And some of that is because, and this was a totally understandable thing, if we lived in a functional democracy like our friends up north or out in Europe, everything we've done for 10 years makes perfect sense. What we have done is we have marketed policy as broadly as we possibly can. Sorry, I had a call come in. So to do that, we bleached partisanship out of our policy talk, right? We wanted to build big collective coalitions to put pressure on lawmakers to pass gun reform, to pass immigration, to pass climate change. And it made sense. Except for 10 years ago, I would have told you, this is a system that's about to have a really big episode, okay? In his story of 245 years, you can see times in American politics where shit hit the fan. And it was very clear by 2010 that we were heading into that. But, it makes sense that you would want to get these coalitions and get public pressure, but we don't have a functional democracy. And now what we have to do is we have to cure all of our system, which has been trained to not make shit partisan, and make it partisan so that we can enhance our tribal effect and keep Maryland Democrats from electing Republican governors, right? So, I've been talking quite a bit the last 6 months about how important our language is. When I say the Republican Party or the Republicans in each of my tweets, know this, it's intentional. I don't say Greg Abbott or Ron DeSantis did something. I add in Republican governor because we have to make those connections for people. So when we bitch about big banks and corporations and pharma and the gun lobby, and we say Congress sucks, we know what that means, okay? We know it's because McConnell and Republicans are obstructionists are going to do shit. No one else knows that. And in fact, even within the most ideological part of the progressive wing of the party, they don't understand that. So when you tell them the problem is corporations, they're not thinking Republicans. So if we want people to blame the Republican Party, we must explicitly connect Republicans to everything, right? You don't have guns, why? Republicans. You don't have climate change, why? Republicans. Right now, we just talk about money and all these other things. And to just wrap it up in a bow, you think about how the Republican system is, who's to blame in the Republican system for fill in the blank? Democrats. It's always Democrats, okay? It's not 5 different things, it's Democrats. And we need to be very sniper strategy about that. And that is probably, the main motivation I had to put out the guide, this grassroots guide, is that reason, because I can't think of a better way to get enough. I can't come to every Indivisible chapter meeting and tell people about it, but I hope that people understand what I'm talking about. If you start to look at our comm stuff, you're going to see how bleached of partisanship it is. So, and even in places that it doesn't have to be, because some groups you have to be nonpartisan, right? But even where you don't, we are really hurting ourselves and handicapping ourselves by not making it clear to voters who like pot that we're the pot party and the other party hates pot. Okay, so you want to tell Maryland youngins, right? Hey, by the way, the Republican Party is going to repeal your pot. They're going to take all your pot away, right? And it's so important for us to do that maker and taker kind of language that they do so well.
Well, that really seems also, when you think about it, when we're already hearing about the move they're making to take away the right to an abortion, right? We know that that's a step toward other things they have on their to-do list, like taking away contraception, and criminalizing those who seek that kind of healthcare solution with an abortion. And so I think making it clear to folks that, this is the beginning of a very slippery slope for a lot of other rights and freedoms to be taken away.
No, you're not wrong. That's what I'm hoping I can get in and affect the most is this abortion messaging, because it should be about women will have less citizenship than you will. Okay, I will not have control over my own body. The state owns my body, right? And that's really what, it is true that poor people and women of color are going to be the most disproportionately hurt. Okay, those are the substance arguments. Those are the right points to make in a policy memo or a white paper. To win the politics, we should freak the hell out of suburban women. Yeah.
So we're just about out of time for the segment, but if you don't mind, maybe just one last question. And you've already touched on this a bit, but maybe you could drill a little bit deeper on it, which is on the best way to offset misinformation. We see so much disinformation coming at us from so many sources, and the whole notion of do we use a truth sandwich to try to deal with it, or do we, as you were talking earlier, how do we pivot away from that to make sure that we're getting our message across?
Here's my problem with how do we fix the misinformation stuff is that it is inherently defensive, right? I mean, and you're not going to fix it because like the fix is seen by 1/10 of the people that saw the original thing. Right. And so it's a waste of resource, right? What we want to be doing is offensive messaging that is just really hitting the Republican Party as hard as we can in the gut. I mean, we should be punching lower than the gut, but right. Like rather than trying to correct the record, because that's exactly what they want us to do. It is our natural posture. They say, hey, the Democrats want to teach kindergartners to feel bad about being white with CRT, and we can't help ourselves, right? We're like, we're right on the facts, we're right on the ethics, we're right on the morals, right? And so we are like, yeah, let's talk about this. You know, it's not actually taught in the schools, but even if it was, we have, you know, that's what they want us to do. And so what we are having to do if we're going to survive, and these are the stakes for this cycle, make no mistake about it. If this country is going to survive, if we are going to do what our ancestors have done before us and bestow on our prosperity a country that is moving forward and not backward, then we must go in offense and force them to explain shit. And the only way we can do that is focusing entirely in that offensive posture.
So perhaps when they go low, instead of us going high, we need to, when they go low, maybe we need to kick them in the backside, right?
Yes, exactly right. I mean, that's what my philosophy is this. You want to talk about education? Good. Okay, because you've decimated public education. You're terrorizing teachers and kids, right? You know, you want to take control of my kid's brain and turn my child against me like it's the Third Reich. Okay, like you want to talk about healthcare? Good, let's talk about healthcare, right? You see what I mean? Like we should be making them pay, dude. There's nothing that there is not. I was teaching a candidate this. He's like, what do I do about this woke shit? And I'm like, dude, anytime someone says something about that, you say, yeah, listen, there are like 5 candidates or 5 people in the Democratic Congress who are obsessed about gender pronouns. But let's talk about this, right? And then you go into the Republican Party, party-wide, multi-state, multi-level of government coup conspiracy, and you just keep going from there. You bring that voter up to speed on the whole Republican portfolio of the last 3 years so that you're talking about them. They have an extremist problem. We don't have an extremist problem. And then you lay out that argument.
Yeah.
And it's naturally offensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, this really has been fantastic. Dr. Bitecofer, we are just so grateful that you were able to take some time with us and really share your thoughts and your expertise with us. We're really grateful for your insights, and we know that it's going to be helpful to us as we take our work forward over the coming months. So we'll continue to follow your tweets closely, and we look forward to seeing that guide when it comes out.
Yeah, and please tell your friends at the other Indivisible chapters, you know, and specifically in Maryland, like I said, what we really want to do is we want to make sure these voters are getting messaging that makes it clear they should be voting straight ticket Democrat.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and we will be posting a video of this as well and getting it out to folks. So hopefully we'll be able to help get that word out.
So great.
So we're just, again, so grateful to you. You're welcome to stay as long as you like, of course. We've got another segment to go through.
Park in Oregon. I don't know if you guys can see it. But look how beautiful it is.
Beautiful day. Yeah, we're envious. So, but anyhow, but really, thank you so much. I just found this really helpful, and you know, we look forward to.
Like I said, you guys are really the ones doing the work, so I'm the one that's grateful for you.
We're all in this together, and we're going to make it happen. So, absolutely.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you again so much. Okay, folks. Thank you for all the great questions. You all, and now before we move on to our next segment, we have another book winner. Once again, it's time to give away another copy of Representative Raskin's book, Unthinkable. And Ted Stewart and Sue Frankel have once again drawn a name at random from our list of participants. And our second winner is Judy Schiffer. Judy, congratulations. Really delighted that you're going to be receiving this book. We'll be reaching out to you to arrange for delivery of the book very soon. And thank you for being with us. And you get a little going away prize for being with us here today. So now on to our next segment on the 2022 elections, the view from Howard County. We've heard from Dr. Bitecofer about the national scene, so we'd like to take a look at things a little bit closer to home. So first, we're going to hear from Tara Carey, who will talk about what our Red to Blue team is doing here in Maryland and next door in Pennsylvania, which is a key swing state, as you know. And she'll talk a bit about how you can help them in making an even bigger difference than they've already been making. After Tara speaks, we're going to hear from Lori Chin, who is the facilitator for our Education Action Team, and she'll be talking about how right-wing radicals are trying to inject fear, hate, and nonsense into schools, including here in Howard County. And she'll talk about how you can help us and help that Education Action Team in defending Howard County schools against that kind of onslaught. So, Tara, over to you.
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Red to Blue Action Team and my co-facilitator, Lynn Fairkolb, I want to take the next few minutes to detail the midterm elections as we view them from our vantage point here in Howard County. Next slide. Now, I initially had in mind to begin by defining the historical context of the midterm elections, but I think Dr. Bitecofer has done that more than sufficiently, such that by now we're all very familiar with the narrative, right? The midterms have not been friendly to the incumbent president's political party. Next slide, Tim. So we're clear-minded about the challenge that lies before us, and quite frankly, challenge accepted. We at IndivisibleHoCoMD Maryland believe strongly in these words of Mahatma Gandhi that even a small group of determined and like-minded people can change the course of history, and that's precisely what we're setting out to do. Next slide. Now, before I expound upon what Red to Blue is doing, I'd like to share a brief but relevant anecdote that I think will shed some light on our thinking and approach. So here goes. A gentleman named James Finnegan was the campaign manager for Adlai Stevenson's 1952 and 1956 presidential bids. And during that 52 election, he observed that Stevenson was consistently underperforming Democratic House candidates all over the country. And so he strategized that Stevenson needed to align his campaign more closely with the state candidates in order to draw their voters to him and leverage their local popularity. And that was eventually dubbed a reverse coattail effect, if you will. Now, this notion that local candidates can be a springboard for national candidates is not a new one, but I wanted to emphasize that here today because it's often counterintuitive to the way many of us think about the way elections can work. Now, in furtherance of this idea of a reverse coattail effect, the political organization Run for Something partnered with two Democratic analytic firms, and they looked at almost 4,000 precincts in 61 counties and 8 states. And what they found was that even if a Democrat didn't win, just having a contested state legislative race resulted in anywhere from a 0.3 to 1.6% boost for Biden in the 2020 election. Now, if that seems modest to you, let me say very clearly that even those margins can be a difference in these hotly contested elections. Now, all of this speaks to the old adage, all politics is local. State and local politics are the lifeblood of American democracy. And national narratives are often born and cultivated at the state level, and local action often gives rise to national impact. So the bottom line is we have to remain vigilant about protecting democracy at every level. Next slide. Now, of course, Maryland has been a blue state since the founding of the modern political parties, but I want to, one, warn against complacency here because of that fact. And two, because of that fact, also encourage us to exploit our capacity to expand our activism beyond our own borders. You know, while Red to Blue is often drawing attention to national contests, we'd be remiss, though, if we took our eyes off the ball in our own backyard. So I want to take a quick look at what's in play in Maryland this midterm election cycle. And the offices up for re-election, you'll see here listed on this slide. Now, with respect to our representation on Capitol Hill, I want to take a moment to mention that many of you are probably aware that Maryland has recently passed a revamped congressional map, and that's moved thousands of Maryland voters into new, more compact districts, myself included. I've moved from District 1 to District 3. So if you haven't already, I highly encourage you to take a look at that new map and see if you may have been impacted also. The link to that map is going to be in the chat. It's on maryland.gov. Now, I want to mention also that the dynamic that we've known of there being this one safe Republican seat that's been Andy Harris's District 1 to 7 Democratic seats in the US House, that dynamic remains after the redistricting. However, one of those Democratic seats is now thought to be a lot more competitive than it's been in the past after the redistricting, and that's Western Maryland's District 6. This is a district that Biden won by 23 points in 2020 under the old map, but under the new map, he would win by less than 10, single digits. So I reiterate, state and local politics are the lifeblood of democracy, and even here in Blue, Maryland, we have to continually aim to elect legislators who are going to advance our democratic ideals, embrace progressive policies, and represent Marylanders with honesty and integrity. And I hope you'll stay tuned as the general election draws nearer, because our action teams, I think they're going to be a really valuable resource for you for those kitchen table issues that are impacting all of us Marylanders day to day, and how our local candidates are going to stack up against them. Next slide. Now, beyond Maryland, Red to Blue is targeting Pennsylvania. Why Pennsylvania? Well, Pennsylvania is a battleground state. And what does that really mean? It means it's winnable for either party in any given election year. And with its 20 electoral college votes, it can be a game changer in the presidential election, as we just saw in 2020. And this year in Pennsylvania, there's a really important Senate seat that's up for grabs. Now, over recent months and years, IndivisibleHoCo Maryland has well-established partnerships with the Pennsylvania Democratic Party and other allied grassroots organizations, all working in concert to keep this critically battleground state blue. Now, it's geographically accessible to us, right? It's just a short, maybe hour drive up I-83 North through Maryland horse country into South Central Pennsylvania. And that's conducive to door-to-door canvassing, which is a time-tested and most effective way for us to engage fellow voters. And I think today, Dr. Bitecofer did a really great job in starting to impart to us some really important rhetorical tools that will help us in that effort. Now, the opportunity in South Central Pennsylvania is that what were previously strong GOP margins have started to erode in these aggressive down ballot challenges. The vulnerability where they can use our help is that what had been long held Democratic advantages in the number of registered voters has started to narrow, and it's on pace to be the smallest it's been in a general election in almost 2 decades. Next slide. So what's in play in Pennsylvania? I mentioned South Central Pennsylvania, and that's the home of Pennsylvania's Congressional District 10. That's Dauphin and York counties, and also the cities of York and Harrisburg. Now, with regard to those eroding GOP margins in the down ballot races in South Central Pennsylvania, in the past 2 midterm elections, Pennsylvania 10, the GOP has had a margin of victory of only 2.6 and 6.6% respectively. So these are among the narrowest in the state with regards to challenging a Republican incumbent in Pennsylvania's representation in the US House, making this a really viable seat to target to flip. And this is especially important given the really slim majority that the Democrats currently have in the US House. Now, hearkening back to that reverse coattail effect, we strongly believe that our efforts here in South Central Pennsylvania are going to benefit races all the way up the ticket, all the way up to that consequential US Senate seat with its national implications. Next slide. Now, more on that Senate seat. There are 34 US Senate seats up for re-election this midterm election, and the Democrats are defending 14, while the Republicans are defending 20. Now, here's some good news. Democrats aren't defending any seats in states Trump won in 2020, while on the other hand, Republicans are defending 2 seats in states Biden won. One of those is, drum roll, it's Pennsylvania. So with the 50-50 split, the VP tiebreaker, flipping this previously Republican-held seat could be pivotal for us in holding the majority in the Senate, especially when 4 of those 14 Democratic seats that we're defending are considered to be vulnerable. That's Arizona, New Hampshire, Georgia, and Nevada. Next slide. So this is where I implore all of you to join us in being part of the change that's going to help us maintain Democratic majorities in the House and Senate, as well as stymie Republican gains in local state legislatures and local municipalities. Now, there are several points of entry for our activism, right? Our volunteers, as I mentioned, are door-to-door canvassing. But if you can't do that, we're also phone banking and text banking. We're writing postcards and doing all of these things in an effort to, one, register voters, to offer vote by mail assistance, to get those people who are inclined to vote in person actually to get to the polls, and to amplify democratic messaging intended to broaden our support. Now, the links to some of these activities are going to appear in the chat, but after this meeting, of course, you can readily access them through our website, our newsletter, and directly through Lynn and myself. Now, for those of you who may be new to these methods of voter outreach, please rest assured that our volunteers are empowered with whatever training they need or desire to be effective and confident in their activism. And importantly, this process can be as flexible and suitable to whatever degree of availability that you have, and no contribution is too small. I'll say that again, no contribution is too small. They're all valuable and appreciated. And so if you're looking for a place to begin, you can begin by just committing a couple of hours a month to saving this democracy. Now, I want to conclude my remarks by sharing this. The work of activism, of course, can be incredibly rewarding, but not just at the ballot box. You know, I'll speak for myself and say I've made many dear friends along this journey, and I crossed paths with some incredible and fascinating people who I may not have otherwise. And it's been an overall enriching experience. And I think Lynn could attest to this, that, you know, the news, especially as of late, has been dark. And, you know, these relationships, this engagement has been an elixir, if you will, for the cynicism that's crept in at times. And it's a good reminder that there are still a lot of good people out there doing a lot of good things. And so if you're not already, I hope you're inspired to join us. And so now I'd like to welcome Lori Chen, a facilitator of our education team. And she's going to speak about our local Board of Education race. And remember what I said about all politics is local. I think you'll find what Lori has to share a really compelling microcosm for what's happening all across the nation. So without further ado, welcome, Lori.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm Lori Chin, the facilitator of the Education Action Team, and today we're going to talk about the state of education politics across the country and how it impacts us here in Howard County. Next slide, please. So what is happening in the world of education politics? Well, as the demographics change, the GOP needs to use new and more aggressive strategies to keep its base and to keep it energized. In addition to working to undermine fair elections, they're now targeting public education. So what does this look like? Well, it looks like framing common sense COVID safety protocols as damaging to children and stepping on parents' authority. Banning books and creating the anti-CRT movements are examples of attempts to decrease access to diverse viewpoints and divert the teaching of accurate history to maintain the status quo of the minority, rich white males, as infallible leaders and erase the contributions of other groups. Lastly, intimidating educators is an attempt to run off strong teachers and public education advocates to decrease the efficacy of public education and eventually just disband it altogether. Since 2020, there have been 85 attempts to recall 225 Board of Education members across the country, centered around these contentious issues, which is a record for a generally nonpartisan position. Next slide, please. So on this slide, there's a quote that seems benign or even positive on its face. Local action equals national impact. Take responsibility for your school committees or boards, get involved in the education of our children, run for local, state, and/or federal office, no more excuses. However, when we realize that this is a directive by Mike Flynn to Q followers, people who have absolutely no place in deciding what should be taught in public schools, we need to be very, very concerned. So who is coming up with these plans? Well, NBC looked at 165 local and national groups targeting wedge issues such as COVID, race, gender, and they found that they were largely supported and funded by large conservative organizations. Some of these organizations are listed here, and you will note that the stars indicate that their websites list Howard County Public Schools specifically. We are in the crosshairs. One such site that we will drop in the chat has a map where people can see ways in which we indoctrinate children, things such as supporting LGBTQIA students and teaching about the effects of slavery. One such group, Parents Defending Education, came to Howard County to promote banning books with LGBTQIA characters. And although they call themselves concerned parents, they are neither local nor grassroots, as their leader is a regular contributor at the Heritage Foundation. Next slide, please. So how does this all play out? So there's model legislation provided by organizations such as the Heritage Foundation and Citizens for Renewing America. And 28 states have attempted to restrict education about racism, bias, or even contributions of specific racial or ethnic groups. Think Black History Month or learning about Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Even though polls conducted in Virginia, Florida, and Texas do not show broad support for this type of legislation, it is being passed and brought to the fore anyway. And this model legislation is being brought forth not just in red states. There have been bills introduced in Colorado, Illinois, Michigan, Washington, New York State, and even here in Maryland. Playbook. Citizens for Renewing America has a 34-page playbook on their website for community members to use. And I stress community members because the targets of these tactics are primarily non-parent households. Parent households tend to be younger and more diverse, as 53% of people under the age of 18 are people of color in this country. Freedom of Information Acts and requests and letter writing campaigns are used in tandem to inundate local school systems with paperwork to take the resources away from and the focus off of the teaching of students, and to make it seem as if there is broader support for these ideas than there actually is. Next slide, please. Aren't we protected here in Howard County? Nope, we are not. Here are just some examples in the past 3 years of these ideas showing their ugly heads right here in Howard County. Book banning, problematic SRO decisions, wavering COVID protocols, gender neutral bathroom discussions, and problematic messaging around redistricting. Just like last week, outside agitators targeted 2 school communities in Howard County with hateful and racist messaging related to abortion at arrival and dismissal times aimed at children as young as 11. This is totally unacceptable, and we need to send a strong message that this will not be tolerated here. Next slide, please. Here is our current Board of Education. There are 7 board members and 1 student member. Our student member is graduating, and he has just been replaced by a new student-elected board member, Abisola Ayula from Wild Lake. We have 3 current board members who have been previously endorsed by Howard County Indivisible, Antonia Watts, Jen Mallow, and Jolene Mosley. The 2 members who are retiring, Vicky Cutronio and Chow Wu, are leaving 2 empty seats. 8 people are running for those 2 county-wide seats. If we can get those 2 seats filled with progressive candidates, we will have a strong majority on the Board of Ed that aligns with our goals. Next slide, please. So what are we going to do? So currently we're gathering information about the candidates. We're reviewing their platforms, attending community forums, and following their public messaging. We created and shared with them a questionnaire developed by members of our action team about topics we feel are important. We will share all the information gathered through our questionnaire on the education page of the IndivisibleHoCo Maryland website, and these should be available sometime after May 25th. We'll have compiled all that data from all the candidates who submit back to us. We'll make recommendations if we find candidates that represent our ideals, which center around respect, fairness, opportunity, and funding for all students. Next slide, please. So what can you do? You can be aware, be informed, follow candidates on social media, look out for them, and engage with them in the community. May 21st, the Education Action Team is meeting to review the questionnaires that we just submitted that we received back from our candidates, and we'd love for you to join us. There'll be a way for you to join us by invitation. There are many community groups having forums. Please attend them if you're available. Some of them are virtual. The Columbia Democratic Club just had a forum that's available to view online, and we can drop that link into the chat so you can view it later. Contact the Board of Ed with topics you feel strongly about. It's very easy. You just email boe@hcpss.org, and it goes to all members of the board. You can watch Board of Ed meetings on TV or online. You can watch, they're recorded. You can just skip to the parts you want to watch later. And when you find a candidate that aligns with your beliefs, Sign up to volunteer, have a house party, get yard signs, go door knocking for them. These 2 at-large seats are very challenging to campaign for because they're countywide. You have to reach the entire county. The majority of Board of Ed candidates are not politicians. They're just concerned citizens who want to do their part to make Howard County a better place to live in and for their children. They need our help. If you sign up for the Indivisible newsletter, you'll get information about our recommended candidates and ways you can help to support them. Thank you all for participating in this meeting and for being willing to support strong public schools in Howard County and beyond. And we hope to see you joining the Education Action Team in the near future and looking forward to an exciting democracy summer. I'll turn it back to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori and Tara. You may not be able to hear it, but I know the folks out there are all applauding for your fantastic presentations. It's really great to have your insights on the scene here, both locally and statewide and across the border with our neighboring state of Pennsylvania. So folks, I think by now you've gotten a better sense of just how high the stakes are for us this year. And you know that the threats to our community and our democracy are growing at local, state, and national levels. And yet we know that we Democrats are the majority. And when we actually show up to vote, we win. It's that simple. So what happens though is when we get complacent, we take our democracy for granted, and then we see things happen like what we saw in 2016. And then with the coup attempt that happened on January the 6th, both of which I would say represented a near-death experience for our democracy and for our nation. And they showed just how fragile our democracy is and how easily we can lose it if we don't stand up to the bullies, grifters, and traitors who think nothing of destroying democracy if it means that they can continue to keep a stranglehold on the power and impose their warped vision of a theocracy on the United States. And we will not let that happen. So now is the time for all of us, all people of goodwill, and those who cherish fairness, tolerance, inclusion, and democracy to come to the aid of the country. And so what we're doing now is we are, in this gathering, we're pleased to launch Indivisible Howard County's Democracy Summer 2022. We're going to be building the blue. We're going to be building that blue wave. And so whether your interest is on local issues or state issues or national issues, there is a place for you with Indivisible Howard County. You can help us in building that blue wave throughout this summer and into the fall. As Representative Jamie Raskin likes to say about politics, when it comes to the future, nothing is impossible and nothing is inevitable. We do have agency here, and working together, we can generate the energy that's needed to build that blue wave through the summer and into November so that we can help turn back the tide of fascism and keep our democracy intact. Now, how are we going to do that? It starts now, right here in the month of May. We've laid out a number of opportunities over the coming weeks where you can get involved. You can help in registering more voters. You can help with phone banking, door knocking, text banking, postcard writing. You can join one of our action teams and help them in getting more folks informed and engaged and really helping to make more of our neighbors and friends more active citizens who are ready and able to step up and defend our democracy. So we've got these activities laid out here for the month of May. We'll be circulating this. You've already seen it, I think, in one of our emails with the links to sign up for these kinds of activities. And again, this can be really fun as well and a great way to make friends and build a greater sense of community. And we've got more of the same on tap for the month of June. As you can see, we're going to be doing more of the kinds of things that we need to be doing to help generate voter interest and turnout. And it's also an opportunity for us to do some things that are going to be fun, like we have a picnic potluck that we're organizing for Friday evening, June the 10th. We'll be meeting on the patio and in the sanctuary of the Owen Brown Interfaith Center right here in Columbia. So again, that'll be an opportunity to get to know each other, and we'll have our action team members on hand so you can find out a bit more about their work and what they're doing. But really, it's an opportunity to just relax together, make some connections. It's been a couple of years where we've not had very many in-person gatherings. And so we're still in a very precarious time with COVID, but we're hopeful that those who feel safe enough and comfortable enough to come out, we will be outdoors as well as having some indoor stuff if anybody would prefer to be indoors. So there will be other things we'll be doing in June, as you can see on this list. If you come to our potluck on the 10th and you bring a friend who's new to Indivisible, you'll both be eligible to win a free Indivisible Howard County t-shirt at that potluck. So please do join us. But it's not just about May and June. We're going to be continuing to do this throughout the summer, right? So we're going to be doing more voter registration, more calls, more texting, more door knocking, all of the things that we need to do to get folks out to vote. And we're going to be engaging in things that, are not just on the canvassing side of things and going out there for candidates and whatnot. We can do some other things that are fun as well, like marching in the July 4th parades locally, showing up and volunteering at the Democratic Party's booth at the Howard County Fair in August, and really making our presence known and helping folks to be encouraged that they are not alone, that we are all in this together and that we can find ways of working together. And we can't take any seat for granted, right? We have to be vigilant and engaged at all levels. And so throughout this period, we need you to be talking to your friends and neighbors about what's at stake. Encourage them to join you in spreading the word and talking with others in their circle of influence, and really recognizing that every vote matters. Those votes did not matter, the other side would not be working so hard to take that vote away from you. So you can also help in identifying candidates for the school boards and other local offices who share our values, and work for them. Go out and make calls for them, knock on doors for them, donate to them, and really do what you can to help them win. And at the end of the day, what we have to do is unify and unite and get behind the Democratic nominees for the Maryland General Assembly, for the governor, for our members of Congress. We've really got to make sure that we not only hold the seats that we have, but that we gain additional seats in both the House and in the Senate. And so month by month, throughout the summer, as we do this, as we go out and as we knock doors, as we make calls through the summer, and as we know our friends and colleagues in other chapters around the country are doing the same thing, we can be building the energy all the way to November, so that by the time we get there in November, our power will be stronger, such that we will be generating not just a blue wave, but we will be generating a blue tsunami. And that blue tsunami will then come and wash over Washington, right? We're going to have it just basically wash through the country and hit Washington in a way that will enable us to make our power stronger, because we don't have to only hold seats, we have to gain seats, especially in the Senate, so that we can make all the things happen that we've not been able to make happen so far on critical legislation, on voting rights, on climate change, on so many other issues where we have to have a more sizable majority in the Senate. So that's what it's about. And if enough of us get off the sidelines and swing into action, we can make that happen and really help keep the Republicans from doing further damage to our nation's health, security, and democracy. So with that, now I am pleased to introduce Representative Jamie Raskin. He's got a special message for Indivisible Howard County. Most of you know him as the representative of Maryland's 8th district, and most of you also probably know him as the leader of the second impeachment trial of the previous president. And he is now a leading voice for the House Select Committee investigating the coup attempt on January the 6th. And prior to his time in Congress, he was a 3-term senator from in Maryland, and he was a professor of constitutional law at American University for more than 25 years. So I would now like to turn the floor over for this message from Representative Jamie Raskin.
Hey, everybody out in Indivisible Howard County. It's Jamie Raskin reaching you from Montgomery County And alas, I'm not going to be able to be there with you for your spring members meeting, but I know it's of essential importance to everything we're doing. So I wanted to send you my greetings and my encouragement in launching Democracy Summer in Howard County. I'm at work during your meeting on January the 6th hearings. We're going to have 8 hearings through the month of June, which will tell the complete story of the first attempted presidential coup in the history of the United States, when Donald Trump essentially tried to overthrow the 2020 presidential election by destroying Joe Biden's majority in the Electoral College, setting aside the regular electoral process, and going outside of the constitutional order to make himself president for another 4 years. And we're going to tell the complete story of this attempted shakedown of American democracy and the unleashing in the process of a violent insurrection against us, with groups that included the Proud Boys, who Donald Trump had told to stand back and stand by, and the Oath Keepers, several of whose members have already pleaded guilty to seditious conspiracy, which means conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States, the 3%ers, the QAnon networks, the Aryan nations, the militia groups, numerous white Christian nationalist groups, and several religious cults. All of these people were mobilized as the violent auxiliary to Donald Trump's effort to overthrow the 2020 presidential election. And this is essential for people to know, both because this is just a democracy and people have a right to know the facts of what's going on with our government in public spaces and public places, but it's also urgently important because the coup plotters are still out there, the insurrectionists are still out there, and there's still an effort to try to thwart majority rule and the will of the American people. And we're seeing that in voter suppression statutes and the gerrymandering of our congressional and state legislative districts, in right-wing court packing, and judicial activism in manipulation of the Electoral College and so on. So we need all hands on deck right now to be defending democracy, to educating the country about what's taken place and what is still going on all over America. I've been doing Democracy Summer as part of my campaigns since way back in 2006, here in Montgomery County and then in Frederick and Carroll. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has adopted Democracy Summer as a model we're promoting all over the country. This summer, we're hoping to have more than 1,000 young people participating in Democracy Summer during this congressional election cycle. So I just want to thank everybody in Howard County Indivisible for taking up the model of Democracy Summer, engaging young people, both to study the civilizing movements of our past, the struggles that people have gone through to defend voting rights and democracy, and then to train them to register people to vote today, to train them to mobilize people to get involved in our elections, to get them conducting canvasses and door-to-door action all over our state, and to teach them how to do digital organizing, and to make them a new generation of organizers and leaders in the struggle for strong democracy in America. So I send you my gratitude, I send you my greetings, and I send you all my best encouragement to go out and find the best and brightest young people you can, put them into the field immediately. Let's win these elections in 2022 and then set the stage for sweeping victory in 2024. Thank you for everything you're doing. Hey, everybody.
Okay, that was great. Really nice to have him with us, even with this special video message. So before we wrap, it's time to give away our third copy of Representative Raskin's book, Unthinkable. And once again, Ted Stewart and Sue Frankel have drawn the name of the lucky winner, and that is Arthur Spilkia. And I hope I didn't mangle your last name there, Arthur, but we are so pleased that you were able to join us for this meeting tonight, and delighted that you'll be going away with this lovely parting gift, the book by Jamie Raskin. So congratulations, and we'll be reaching out to get you that book as soon as we can. So to close, we just heard from one national treasure, Representative Jamie Raskin, who we're so fortunate to have from Maryland in the Congress. And you may all remember fondly, those of you here in Howard County, our former representative who represented Baltimore City and a good part of Howard County, Elijah Cummings. Representative Cummings was the conscience of the Congress. And really, he too was a national treasure. And he was prescient in foreseeing the challenges that we now face. And he warned us very clearly just a couple of short years ago, right, that we really do have to stand up for our democracy if we want to keep it intact for our children and our children's children. And really, this is our watch. And we hope that you will join us in making this Democracy Summer an unforgettable time when we came together to work and make it happen and to defy expectations by generating that blue tsunami in November. We can do this together, and we really welcome and appreciate any support that you can bring to that effort. So we're grateful for you joining us here tonight. And with that, I'm going to close the formal part of today's meeting. We're going to hang around here for just a few minutes in case there's any lingering questions some of you might have that we can talk about informally. But with that, our meeting is closed, and thank you all so much for taking the time with us here today. There we go. Keep that up. So I'm going to invite my colleagues if I have not been able to monitor the chat, so I don't know if we've got any questions that others may have raised that we might want to try to address. Look here.
Anyone have any questions? Drop in the chat.
And just a reminder, we will be sending around to all the participants, all the attendees, the PowerPoint deck, as well as the resources that were dropped into the chat. So if you missed something and didn't jot down something, don't worry about it. We will be getting that information to you.
Right, and if you received the update this morning, that has a link to all of the Democracy Summer plans. May is pretty well fleshed out, June pretty well fleshed out, July has a lot, but we'll be adding new stuff as it comes up. And if people have ideas about new activities, please reach out. This is a collaborative effort. We've created the calendars as sort of a framework to give some order, but definitely interested in hearing your ideas about other things we could be doing.
Absolutely. And again, this really is a bottom-up, grassroots-driven effort. So, if you have ideas and things, we welcome them. And if you want to get onto one of the action teams, I know that they would be delighted to have your help.
Yes, we actually got quite a number of new members in the chat. So thank you everybody who put your name in and raised your hand for an action team. Again, we're bottom up, so everything that we do, as B's members said, was something that we should do. And so thank you for the fresh inspiration and new pairs of hands to help share the load.
So unless I'm missing something, I'm not seeing a flood of questions coming in, and that's fine. We're always happy to wind up things, but we did want to make sure that if you had a lingering question, this is an opportunity to send a question across, and we'll be happy to try to respond to it. Otherwise, you've got our contact information here as well. And particularly if you thought that you were already a member and you're not seeing our update, again, I do invite you to please reach out and let us know so we can make sure there's no problem with your email address or whatever the issue might be, or if our messages are going into your spam folder. Just invite you to have a look at that to make sure that you're seeing our updates. So unless I see some questions here, maybe we can wind up. Maybe we've given you all what you needed for this evening, but we are again are so grateful to all of you for your engagement and just the fact that you chose to spend a portion of your Sunday evening here with us. We really do appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully at our June 10th member potluck at the Owen Brown Interfaith Center and at the other activities that we're teeing up for this summer. So, okay, why don't we call it a wrap? And again, thank you all for joining us and have a great evening.